Masech Shavous Daf Ches Amud Aleph. We're starting from Amar. We learned three dagas of Yediyas in which either the Sor Hapnimi forgives, Mashal, if there was a Yediyah B'tchila, and then there was Alama, then the Sor Hapnimi, the one that was Gerul Hashem, the blood that was sprayed on the Mizbeach Hapnimi, or right outside towards the Pareiches, that forgave for the Yediyah at the beginning without the Yediyah at the end. And then if you have Yediyah B'tchila with a Halama in between another Yediyah, there you bring a Kav Moed. Then you had at last case where there was no Yediyah at the beginning, but there was a Yediyah Basaf, and that the Sar HaChutz, the Sar Musif, which was done on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, the blood was sprayed on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, that forgives for the Yediyah Basaf. So we also learned the Machlokes. From where do we know that we're talking about the Tumah of Migdash v'Kadashav? So we had Rabbi Yehuda who learns it out Mitumas B'nei Yisrael v'Loi Kol HaTumis, and we learned with Amam Etzino that it's only referring to Migdash, that somebody was coming and entered the base of Migdash, or he was coming and he ate Kodesh. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Shimon learned it out Mamish from the Pasik. It says a direct quote, "V'chipa al hakodesh mitumais." So only of tumis of kodesh, like meaning that he was tummy and he entered the mikdash, or he's tummy and he ate kosher. Zak Yimarav Amar Tana had said, we learned in the previous, but I say, Yochel, I would have thought al shalish tumais. Hallelujah, he has some mechaper. I would have thought on these three tumis, like we said before, with the zarash v'zdamim. And Gilada is that the Sarah Pnim is Mechaper, Tamad Lema, me tumes. Comes the Pasuk and says, me tumes, we call tumes, not all tumes. And with the Mamatzino, we learn out Mamatzino, just like the Tuma which we find in another place. Shechila Akasim Yiklal, Akolat tumes, the Torah is separated, and between all tumes, between Mikdash V'Kadashav, that it's referring only to a Tuma that somebody was coming into the Mikdash, or ate kachim avkan. So too, when it comes to the kapora of the Sar Hapnimi, the Torah, when it says mitumes, the Torah is referring to dafke betumes mikdash v'kadashov, that's where the Sar Hapnimi will be forgiving. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. My chilik, of what, how, what did the Torah? How did the Torah separate the tumah of mikdash v'kadashov from the general kol hatumes of all tumes? Says the Gemara, that all the other avedas, the tumas of the other avedas, the b'shegek, what kind of a cup does he bring? A chatas kavua. Mashain came over here by tumas mikdash v'kadasha. He brings a cup ma'ilaviyed. That's how it's different. In fact, you want to avedas zada? Say avedas zada is the sar. Hapnimi should forgive, should be mechap on him. And how is the Avodah Zarah different than the other tumes? Because the Maisi, if he does as he was Avodah Zarah b'shegeg, he brings for his kapara seira dafka a goat, but not a sheep, not a sheep, no sheep. And you want to have anan? When we said this, what I said, this mamatzino chilik that we were separating from all the other tumis lahakal kaminan, we came to be lenient that by mikdash kedusha it's more lenient that it only brings a kabbalah b'yedid versus the other kabbanas you bring a chatzis kavua. But by avodah zarah chilik lahachlu, you're coming to be machmed that the avodah zarah you're saying dafka a seira, not a keves. It has to be dafka a goat and not a sheps. In fact, you might say that the pasuk was talking about a tumah that's different than all tumas, benegeya, and therefore the kapara of Sarah Pnimi is going on Yeledis, which the Torah says that when her days of Tara are completed, to bring her, so she has to bring her carbon in order to be able to eat kachim. So we learn out from this pasuk that if Yom Kippurim came right after the Malays Yemei Hatara, the completing of her the Taradika days, then she's allowed to eat kachim even without a carbon, because she was already forgiven with the Sarah Pnimi. Because we find the chilik that the Torah is mechalik lahakil, but from other tumas, the Maisa Because by a Yeledis, what kind of a carbon does she bring? That's how she's different than all the other chatos, which brings a chatas kavua. So maybe it's referring to Yeledis and not to the case of Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav. How do you know that by Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav the Sarah Pnim was forgiving? Maybe it's only on Yeledis. Rabbi Yishaya said L'chol Chatesam. It says in the pasuk that the Sarah Pnim is L'chaper L'chol Chates, which means only on sins it's forgiving. But not on tumis that don't have a chet. And therefore, Yeledis doesn't make sense because it's not coming on a sin. It's only coming to be matar from a tumah to be able to be masher, to eat and kachim. When you get to Yeledis, there's also the thesis that says that not that the Sar Pnim should forgive completely, rather it's going to be only temporarily because she's not sure if it's a Yeledis or it's going to be a miscarriage. And only after Yom Tov, after Yom Kippur, that's when she would actually have to bring again a carbon. But in the meantime, it'll protect her from any Yisurim. That's how Taisus learns. Rabbi Shimon, because it said L'chol Chateisim, like you'll soon see later, that it's referring to a carbon that she'll have to bring in the future. According to Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, he says that Yeledis is also a sinner. Why? Because she makes a shvua that in a time when she's giving birth, she says she'll never get together with her husband in order not to go through such a pain again. Therefore, the Torah says she has to bring a carbon to be mechaper on her shvua. So, what are you going to say then? It does refer, the pasuk fits with the Sarah Pnim, which says L'chol Chateisim is applicable even by a Yeledis because she's a sinner as well. She made a shvua at the time she gave birth in order that she won't live with her husband in order not to go through the tsar again. After the Rabbi Shimon, the Tamei. Rabbi Shimon goes according to his reasoning. The Amma, how does he know that the Mikdash, the Tamei Mikdash V'Kadashav is going to be forgiven through the Sarah Pnimi? He learns it out from the pasuk. It says it. It says b'feidish kodesh. That's how he learns it. Let us say it's referring to a mitzvah when it says metumais. That mitzvah is different. That we find that by a mitzvah it brings a couple of so that's how it's different than all the other tumas. So maybe when it says the Sarah Pnim is forgiving L'chol Tumaisam, maybe it's referring to the Tumah B'Tzera. L'chol Chatoisam, L'chol Tumaisam. It says there has to be a Tumah that there's a sin, but a B'Tzera, the carbon is not coming to forgive on a chet. It's only coming to be Matar from his Tumah to be Mashim to Bachlis Kachim. V'Gimaru Rab Shimon bar Nachman D'Amar Shivat Vadim Negoim Boyin Ma'ikol Meima. It says in Erchin that on 7 sins a person is punished because of nega. The nega is because of lashon hara, shvus damish, shvus shav, gilarayis, gasaruach, gezel, and tzarasayin. So you see, so nega is for sin. So what are you going to say? Maybe so. Maybe when we said the Sarah Pnimi is forgiving l'chol tumas l'chol chatesam is referring to mitzvah, not to tumas mikdash v'kadasha. And the Yimanu Hasam nigei the chapalei. There, the nega itself forgives him on a sin, not the carbon. The carbon that he brings is only to complete his tara l'ishtaruye b'kahal b'kadashim, to be matim, to come back and be kal Hashem and to eat kachim. In fact, the Yimanu Heima say that the Sarah Pnim is mechaper on a nozer tamei, a nozer that became a tamei mace, that the Torah says he has to bring a carbon, and so there the chilik, the maisi Torah b'nei yaina, there we know it's different than a normal carbon because it doesn't have to bring a behemoth, it can bring birds, turtle doves, pigeons. So maybe there it's referring to that the Sarah Pnim will be forgiving. Rabbi Yishaya said, "L'chol chatesam, l'chol tumaisam." It says l'chol chatesam, excluding a nazir tamei, that he doesn't bring a carbon for sinning, to forgive for a sin, only that he should be able to start counting from new again. Rabbi Lazar hakap diyama the nazir namech chaytahu, that a nazir is also a chayta. because he was Mitzari himself from Yahimayik Lameim. What are you going to be able to say? So according to Rabbi Lazar, it doesn't have to be talking about a Nazar Tameh. So why does it mention Nazar Tameh? So the Taisus answers that even by Nazar Tameh, the mere fact that he became Tameh and he prolonged the days that he was Mitzari himself, that according to everybody will be in of a sin. So what are you going to be able to say? And you want to go, you're right. It could exclude Nazir, but how do we know that the Sar Apnim is forgiving only on Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash? Because it says, like Rab Shimon Yochai learned out, it says V'chipa Ba'Kodesh Mitumasai. So there it says B'Kodesh is going on Kodesh. Oh Mamar, we learned in the Braisa Rab Shimon Yochai that you don't need the binyan av or the mamatzino mitumais that to say that that it's mikdash v'kadash is different, just like we find in another place. So too by mikdash v'kadash is different than when it says mitumais. It's referring to mikdash v'kadash that the sarapnim is forgiving. Mim kainoi humucha. He can learn out from the pasuk written there. By the Sarah Pnimi, it says, it says, but it comes to be mechapa mitumas shal kodesh on tumas bigdas v'gadosha. In fact, the Gemara Shapa Kamer Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon said a great limud from the pasuk itself. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, why did he learn it out from a mamatzino? Rabbi Yehuda Amalach. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ahu." That passing of Bechita comes to teach us just like the Kohen Gadol did in the Kodesh HaKadosh, that he sprayed 7 hazayis between the Badi HaOrin, 1 Lamaila and 7 Lamata from the Dam HaPar, and also from the Dam HaSor. So too Hachinavid, so too the same amount he did Al HaKodesh, meaning Beheichel, on the side of the Parechas, which was Mishamichutz. The Kodesh HaKadoshim that he prayed Achs L'mayla B'Shev L'mata. Reb Shimon that he learns V'chibal HaKadosh a different way. He learns that it's going on Mikdash V'Kadosho. So what does he know? That it was done the same thing. Whatever was done inside was done right outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the Gemara, who V'chein Yasa Lo Yomayit. He said from the Hamshach of the pasuk it says, so you shall do it to Lo Yomayit. Nafka. That's where he learns out that you do the exact same thing that you did with the Dam HaSoyer and Chatas, a par, on Befnim, you did the same thing in the Chutz Kodesh Gadashim. Like you want to Rabbi Yehuda, why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda learn this from the Chen Yasa? Says, you want to Imahi, have I mean a nice part of Soyer Achrim and Navid. If from that pasuk I would have thought that you have to bring, when it says Chen Yasa, that you have to bring a new part and Soyer and do it over again. Kamash Malan. That's why we had the Chipah B'Kodesh to tell us, no, it's the same par and sorry that was used in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You use the blood for that. You use that same par of sorry for the Mechutz LeKodesh HaKadoshim. Like you might Rabbi Shimon that he dashed the Chibal HaKadosh. How does he know that it's not a new par of sorry? So he answers, mashma. When it says so you shall do it to the oil made, it means from the same par of sorry. That we looked in the Braisa Yachol, I would have thought to say, Al Kol Tumas B'Kodesh Mechaper on all Tumas B'Kodesh, whether there was a Yediyah, whether there was no Yediyah, the Sar is Mechaper. Talmud Leimen Mi Pish Eyam L'Chol Chatoisam, to compare Chatoim to Pshoim, just like Pshoim by the sins b'Bezid, they're not forgiven with a Kabin Yachid. So too the Avenis B'Shegeg. The Sarah will only forgive on those sins b'shegeg that is not miskapa b'karban yachid. Mind you, what is the case of Shiknas Tumah Mikdash V'Kadosho that you're referring to? Yesh ba Yedi b'tchila, yesh ba Yedi b'asaf. Is it going on? Maybe it's coming to exclude a case of Yedi b'tchila, Yedi b'asaf, and there was a helmet tayim. Says the Gemara, no, it cannot be excluding that. Because it's not doimet to pshayim, high bar kavanu. There you have to bring a kavan oil. So it cannot be referring to that case. I mean, the Gemara Leitzicha has to be referring to this Yadalei, some Lishkis Achama, that he became aware of his sin, Erev Yom Kippurim, where he didn't have time to bring the Kavan Oil before Yom Kippur came in. So he wasn't a bar carbon till after Yom Kippur. So I would have thought that the Maisi till he'll bring the carbon after Yom Kippur. So the Sarapni will be a protector for him from Yisurim, Kamash Malan. That's why the Hekish of Chatoim Lipshoyim comes to teach us a tumah that had the Yediyah. It's only referring to that there was a Yediyah Basaf. And there's no kapara at all. I'm sorry, that a tumah that had a Yediyah Basaf, that there was a awareness at the end, is not forgiven with the Sarah Pnimi. Even on Yom Kippur itself. It has to be a case where you had a Yediyah, B'tchila, B'halama, and no Yediyah Basaf. Amamar, we learned in the B'rais earlier on, Menayim, from where do we learn now? Sheyesh B'yediyah, B'tchila, B'yediyah Basaf, Shesor Zed Tayla. What do we learn out? That if he had a Yediyah at the beginning, before the Halama, and then he had a Halama, and there was no Yediyah Basaf, that the Sarah Pnimi protects him from Yisurim. In fact, you better Menayim, Maika Kashulei. What is this kasha? You learn out from the Hekish, Chatoyim Lipshoyim, that Soya Pnim is Mechapa, only what kind of tumah is? A tumah that's not shaykh, b'shaykh is not shaykh to bring a carbon. This is because it has to be similar to Pshoyim, where he cannot bring a carbon. So, of course, that's what we know it. Like this is how the kasha went. Now that you made the Hekish, that the Soya Pnim is not Mechapa, only Chatoyim do the Pshoyim, only in such sins that are similar to Pshoyim. Ma Pshoyim, the Lav Neikab, Ma Chatoyim, Nami the Lav Neikab. That Soyapnim is forgives only on Chatoyim which are similar to Pshoyim, and just like Pshoyim are not in the Geda bringing a carbon, so only on such sins which is Lav Neikab. So now comes the Shaila. Ema map shom labnei kabin la'ilam, av chatem labnei kabin la'ilam. Say, since you're comparing the shogeg to the pshoyim, that it's the labnei carbon, but learn also the labnei kabin la'ilam. They can never bring a carbon. Umaninu, and what is the case that you can never bring a carbon? That ein ba yediyah b'tchila v'yesh ba yediyah b'sof. That he didn't have a yediyah at the beginning, but he only had a yediyah at the end. But a case that we were originally thinking that if he had a Yediyah beginning, but no Yediyah Basaf, that's what it's protecting. When he becomes aware of the Chet, he's a Bakabim. So I would have said, no, it shouldn't protect because he's shaykh to bring a carbon. And Pshoim there's a Hekish to Pshoim, it has to be that you can't bring a carbon ever. And if you want to say, that it's referring to a case where there wasn't a Yediyah beginning, but it was a Yediyah Basaf. Shesoyed Hanas Bachutz, Yom Kippurim, which is done on the Mizbeach HaChitz, Yom Kippurim, Atzmai Mechapa Aleha, and Yom Kippurim itself forgives on that, meaning the Sarapnim will forgive at that. I'm sorry, you're going to say, so you don't need the kapara of Sarah Pnimi. Why? Because because we already learned that the third Sarah, the Sarah of Musaf, the Sarah that's sacrificed bachutz on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, as for the blood is sprayed on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, that's the one that forgives if there was no Yediyah at the beginning and only a Yediyah B'sof. Says, I would have thought, no, you should reverse it. Because since it says that you need that the Chataim should be similar to Pshayim, and the Pshayim have to be such a carbon that there's such a case that you can never bring a carbon. So I would say we should reverse it. It's referring to which case is a case that you can never bring a carbon, that he didn't have a Yediyah B'tchila, but he only had a Yediyah B'sof. So we should say, that's where the Sarah Pnim is forgiving. And for the case where there was only a Yediyah B'tchila and no Yediyah B'sof, there we should say that the Sarah Chutz should forgive. Says the Gemara by the Sarah Pnimi, it also says the word lechol. Lechol chatesim, the menei chatesim, in the meaning that it's going on a shogeg that are ready to be forgiven through a carbon. meaning where he had a Yedid B'tchila and he didn't have Yedid B'sof, but eventually when he will become aware at the end that he's Chai B'Karbon, that he'll be able to bring a carbon. So it does fit with the Sarah Pnimi, because since the Sarah Pnimi has the words L'chol Chateisim, which talks about a shoygeg that he's right to bring a carbon. That's the case of only Yedid B'tchila and no Yedid B'sof. Sagt die Gemara, when his kapar Gemara, let us say this tumah that had a Yedid B'tchila without Yedid B'sof, and you said this happening, he forgives. Let it be a complete forgiveness. Why does the Braisa say that the Soyer Apnimi is only toilet? It's only hanging till he becomes aware, and then he has to bring a carbon. And the Gemara if the Torah would have wrote Mipishayim Vichatoisam Kidika Amrit, then I would have said, like you said, that the Soyer is Mechaper completely, and his patters him from the carbon. Now that it says with a lamed lechol chatesam before chatesam, so we say it's lahanach da'as lechol chatas. It's referring that it forgives to such tumis that will come eventually to have to bring a carbon. That he's shaykh to come to bring a carbon, meaning if he gets another awareness that he will have to bring a carbon. If it's not going to really be mechaper the Sarah Pnimi for Yedid B'tchila and without a Yedid B'sof, Lama Teila. So what's the Teilas of Sarah Pnimi? What does it help? To teach us to say that if he died before he became aware that he sinned, that he dies without any sin. So Rabbi said, what? If he dies, we know the Misa itself cleanses his sin, not the carbon, the Sarah Pnimi. Allah only Rabbi says, it's to protect him till he becomes aware from the Yisunim B'dei Shamayim that he's fit to get punished for his sin, till he becomes aware, and that's where it protects him. We learned in the Braisa, somebody who didn't have Yediyah at the beginning, but he only had Yediyah himself, that's where the Sarah B'chutz come and Yom Kippur forgives. So it says by the Sarah Nas B'chutz, it says Se'izim Echad L'chatas, that's going on the Sarah B'chutz, and then it says Milvad Chatas HaKippurim, which goes on the Sarah Pnimi. So these two Sirim are connected with each other. And the Gemara is going to say, Mechti is Kashush, is Kushi, is Kush, La'adadi. So we see the two Sirim are compared to one another. Like what we just said, which is going on the Sarah B'chutz. Milvad Chatas HaKippurim, which is the Sarah Pnimi, we compare these two. Unechaper HaPnimi Adidei. Says the Gemara, let the Chitzai. Says the Gemara, let the Sarah Pnimi forgive on the Tumah that was Saiv for, that was designated, meaning that there was a Yedid B'tchila and no Yedid B'sof, and also for the sin that there was only Yedid B'sof, because we say that the Sarah Pnimi and the Sarah Chitzon are mukish, are compared to each other. Each one can forgive for the other's sin. And nafkamina, where will you see a chilik? In a case where they didn't have another Sarah for the Chitzon, so let us say that the Sarah Pnimi should not only forgive for Yediyah B'tchila without a Yediyah B'sof, but it should also forgive for one who didn't have a Yediyah B'tchila and he only had a Yediyah B'sof, because we say the two Seirim are compared to one another. And the Gemara Amakra, when they get to the Mizbeach HaPnimi, it says V'chipa Arna Kanois of Achas Bashana Midam Achatz HaKippurim. It says once. This pasuk is extra, so it's coming to Dashin that Kapora Achas Mechaper, that Aaron with this blood of the Sarah Pnimi comes to be Mechaper only on one sin. On one tumah that was designated for that Sarah, that means where there was Yedid B'tchila and no Yedid B'sof. The Eidim Mechaper Shtei Kaparis, and he cannot forgive two meaning even for the one that there was no Yedi at the beginning, but only Yedi B'Saf. Okay, there you have a special pasuk achas. Unechapa chitzna ditei, b'amay David pnimi. Let the chitzon forgive, the Sarah chitzon forgive not only on a Yedi B'Saf without a Yedi B'Tchila, but it should also forgive for one who had a Yedi B'Tchila without a Yedi B'Saf, which normally the Sarah pnimi forgives, but if there's no, let it, the Sarah chitzon forgive for both. And nafkamina, where will you see the chilik in din? Let tuma the ira bein l'zeh, meaning that he was making the Sarah pnimi, and then again he was a aveda of tuma that he had a yedi b'chila v'nelam again right after the Sarah pnimi was sacrificed. So let the Sarah chitzim forgive for that. And the Gemara Amakra and behemshich of that pasuk it says again achas b'shana midam achatz sakipurim achas b'shana yichaper. So from this that in the seif of the pasuk, where it says Yichaper, it's next to the words Achas Bashana. We learn out Kapara Zu of the Sarah Pnimi Loi Tehei Ela Achas Bashana, meaning it could only be with the Sarah Pnimi, and there's no other carbon that could forgive for that type of a case where there was Yedi B'Tchila Lo Yedi B'Asaf.